Welcome, everyone. We're going to begin the webinar on Introduction to the new SATA Filter 500 series and when to use the SATA Filter 500 or the SATA Filter 200. I'm Melissa Joels with RDA Impact. Tony Larimer, Director of Sales and Marketing, and Chris Springer, National Accounts and Industry Relations Manager for Dan Company, are your presenters today. The presentation will take approximately 50 to 55 minutes. We are recording it and will make it available to everyone after the presentation. If you do have questions, you have a couple options. You can raise your hand in the control bar and I can unmute you, or you can type something in the chat box at the bottom right of your screen and we'll answer the questions during the presentation. Now I'll turn it over to Tony.
All right, welcome, thank you. We're going to introduce the new 500 series filter, and we apologize for the technical difficulties we had a month ago, but we've seem to have that all sorted out. So we're going to do this today, and I'm going to start by a couple things. We do have new brochures that we created that have all of the detailed part numbers inside. We have also updated our Dan Air catalog, which is our Dan Air aluminum piping system, but we've included part numbers and images of the Filter 500. And if you haven't received it yet, we do have new catalogs done for this year, and they look very nice. The layout inside is a big improvement, but also it has the Filter 500 inside. So if you haven't received these and you would like them, please contact us at our office at 800-533-8016, and you can request as many as you'd need for your location. We're going to start. I'm going to go through kind of a box opening and show you a few things that you want to look at before installation on this filter and what your customers or you may expect to find when you open the box. And then we're going to mount it on a little display stand here with some help from Wayne Volkart, and we'll go through more of the presentation portion. So just to get started, I want to show you that in this box, it is quite well packaged for protection and shipping. But what's different than in the past is the new Filter 500 series comes with this packet or box that inside has all of your canisters for the filter. It also has the cartridges that go inside, and you'll notice that the cartridges that go inside now have this bayonet style connection where they just drop into the filter canister. And then we'll show you how this simply connects to the filter body. So each one of the filters are like that. So, and you'll also notice that on the front of this, there's a yellow stripe midway down the canister, which corresponds with the water cyclone device that's also yellow. And inside of that, water cyclone is, like we've had in the past on the 200 or the 400 series filter, there is a water cyclone device, but it's much simpler to remove now because you can take it out and have it in your hands as you disassemble. So this piece, the sintered bronze cartridge, as we'll go through later in the presentation, you take this out and clean it once every 6 months. Clean the yellow portion with soapy water and rinse it, blow it dry, put it back in. And this nut just screws back in. It's very simple to do. And the bayonet style drops in place. Now, one of the big benefits, and we'll repeatedly say this, is by having that in place with those bayonet style, is the cyclone device is always in the same position so that your airflow never changes throughout use of the filter. So it's where before we had little plastic nuts and different seals you had to replace every time. You don't have to replace those seals. The seal is permanent in the body of the housing. Plus, it's always in the same location. So it just makes for much better airflow through this system. We'll also show you more on that in a moment. Inside this also we have a fine filter. The fine filter, you'll notice, is blue. The housing has a blue stripe, so it's easy to match up, but the new fine filter is still capable of filtering down to 0.01 microns, so very, very fine. It cleans all the way down to vapor form. It has the bayonet style, so the filter just drops in. You don't have to change any O-rings anymore. You don't have that little loose or little nut at the bottom that you had to fine thread. So that's the same, as well as, well, I'll show you on the housing in a moment of the filter, that same blue color code or the yellow color code dot, as well as in the third stage canister, which is the carbon unit, is black. There's a black stripe on this canister, as well as black cartridge, and there's a black dot on the top of the filter head. So each one is color coded 3 different ways so that you don't mix up and put the wrong cartridge in the wrong canister. So those are the 3 canisters, but now to show you the filter body. This is the new 500 series filter head assembly. One thing you will notice is the air inlet now still is on the left side, going through to the right, but we've moved the regulator to the opposite side. It always used to be it regulated beforehand, and then output side was after. However, SATA realized that by regulating it at the very end, now you're not getting any airflow changes all the way through the filter, so the airflow is the same process all the way through each cylinder for much better particle separation. And then just regulate it down at the end where you need it. They put a better regulator handle on it so it's easier to turn, and they've upgraded the gauge, which we'll show you in a moment in the presentation, so it's easier to read. They've increased the air pressure in and out of this also, where in the past we were at 145 pounds was where we recommended, or lower. With this one now we'll go up to 218, which is 15 bar, where at the past we were at 10 bar going in and out of the filters. So increased flow, a higher CFM, so now at 135 instead of 127. So that's also an improvement. But the other reason I want to show you this is you'll see on the back, it's a little dark with my shirt coming out of the way, you can see the holes. So now it's easy to mount to the wall. There's a few different options for mounting holes, but it's easier to do now. Before you put your canister on, you mount this to the wall, and then I'll show you how when we put the canisters in, it's got a haptic and an acoustic sound, so you feel it click, and it has an audible sound that you can hear, so you know it's in place. But what I also want to show you is on the bottom side of this, and I'm going to try and get it a little closer here, there's a seal on the inside of this. It's a permanent seal. They're like a rubberized coating that the filter cartridge itself seats up against. That it should be permanent. Now, however, it can, as we've noticed, taking them apart, put them together about 150 times, you can see where occasionally that can pull a little bit loose. So just check that. All you have to do is press on it, make sure it's tight. You'll notice if you go to click your filter canister in, if it doesn't quite go in and click easy, that seal may have pushed down, or pushed out. You just push it in place, make sure it's solid, and it's good to go. You can also see all of these little screws on the bottom. This is a modular system where each one of the heads, if we have a 2-head, a single head, or a 3-head, plus a regulator, are all pressed together with seals. And then the screws fastened to the mounting bracket underneath to hold it in place. One good thing about this filter is it's reversible. So if my air doesn't always come from this direction, it has to come from this way because of where it's mounted on the wall or in the booth. You can reverse it by taking this gauge out. On the back side, there's a plug that you can take out and swap the gauge to that side of the regulator. But now your bracket's facing the wrong way. So that's what those little screws are for. You take those 8 screws out, flip your bracket around, put the 8 screws back in, and now it's all assembled the other way, so it is reversible. The part number for this filter is in all of the literature. We will add a reverse flow or RF number at the end of a part number and keep a couple of these as reverse flow already here. So if we're quoting a Dynam air system and someone lets us know by the drawings that we need to air to come the other way, we already have that available. But if you get one that's normal and you're stocking one that's normal direction, it literally takes less than 10 minutes and you can reverse it so that they can use it correctly on install. The last thing I want to show you, when SATA developed this, the one thing that they did is they wanted to optimize how much air could get through it. In the process of doing that, they did not put a thread stop inside of here. So there's going to be a decal that goes over this hole on the end that just says don't turn any fittings in more than a 1/2 inch. You need to put a drop of Loctite on it, glue it in place. But what's also nice is before you hang it on a wall, you can see the air passages up in here. So if someone installs one and they call you and say, I'm not getting any airflow through my filter, it's because they turned their fitting in all the way to the bottom and it bottomed out and blocked an air passage. So as a solution for that, we're including this little fitting inside the box, and this fitting I'll show you on the PowerPoint later has a little better picture, but this screws in. It only goes in as far as it should, and then it's female thread on the opposite side, so you'll be able to connect any pipe fitting you want to that, but it also has a Teflon seal on it, so you don't need any glue. You just tighten this in place and it will work for your input side, and we also have these for the output side. So this is a nice way to easily hook this up in the booth. Now, down the road, SATA is talking where they're going to make that change and put a thread stop inside. And if you get a filter that doesn't have that decal over it, and doesn't have this adapter in the box with it, then it's the new version. So this is just going to be temporary. We're hoping for maybe the first month or two. And then after that, it'll have a thread stop inside that they've designed later. So pretty cool filter assembly, easy to install, high flow. But now let's put this thing together up on the stand. I'm going to get a little help hanging this. I'll hold it. And the canisters on. So what I also want you to see is on the top of this, you can see the color coding system on the top of the filter. All right, so now when we're putting the canisters on, as I mentioned, I want to also show you, these also have a seal. So we have the seal up inside. We also have a sealing ring that's on the outside of this canister. So it seals the canister to the body. So when I put this one in, you just slide it in the slot so it goes all the way to the top and bottoms out. And when I turn this, it clicked. So you can hear that click or feel that click, and you know that it's all the way up in. All the way pressed in. There. So you can feel it click and you can hear it click. So the nice part about that is you know it's sealed when that happens. It's easier when it's bolted to the wall. It just clicks in place. So those are some of the benefits of this. Now, where there's also incredible benefit, we're going to go through in this presentation, and you'll see it in a couple places, is now you'll also notice we have a color code system strip that goes in here, or a filter timer that drops in. It's a 6-month timer because you maintain the first stage at 6 months and clean it. The second and third stage are replaced every 6 months. So now it's just one date that you have to remember, so we only need one filter timer. So your fine filter cartridge has always been a 6-month filter, but this new sintered cartridge that we have in the carbon system is a much more efficient way, and their estimation is 10% better efficiency at picking up particulates and vapor, all the way down to vapor form. So cleaner air even than our 400 or our 200 series, which have been outstanding breathable air. There's definitely an improvement there. And the sintered cartridge lasts 6 months instead of 3 months. So it's a lot less maintenance time, plus not having to take that small nut off, not having to deal with threads, having to change O-rings. A filter maintenance change now should take you 10 minutes or less to do once every 6 months. So it's real simple. So we're happy about that. So I want to switch now to the presentation so you have some backup slides to back up what we're talking about. But we're also going to Melissa has an email that she's going to send to you at the end of this for everybody that has this presentation in a PDF form so that you can look at it on your phone or iPad or computer or wherever you're at. So if you want to share any of the details, you'll have that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so you should be able to see that.
You do.
Let me minimize this so I can see what happened. There we go. All right, so the first thing is when we're talking about compressed air, let me see, did that not there yet? That must not be. There we go. Now it's there. It just took a little delay. We have to have clean air for painting, obviously, but we also need clean air for breathing. And these are some of the things that we filter for. To have a perfect paint job or to have clean air for breathing, we need it to be clean, which is free from dust, dirt, silicone, all of that stuff. And silicone also includes those filters that are using desiccant, because many people think when they hear silicone, they always think of the detail shop and blame them. And when many cases we've got filtration out there that's putting desiccant beads in that fracture every time they get wet and expand, and they make a dust, a fine filtered dust that ends up blowing right out of your spray gun, because typically that's in the last stage of their filters. So we're seeing a lot of contamination. And then over the last few years with Prop 65 coming in place, Desiccant is listed as a carcinogen that is cancer causing, and it isn't allowed to be used in breathing air. So these SATA filters do more than just give you clean air for your paint guns. They give you breathing air quality so that your painting air is also that clean. So we're not adding contamination of oils, oil vapors, not just droplet form, but down to vapor form. We're eliminating all of the corrosion and other particulates that are coming through your airlines before it blows out into your paint jobs. We also want air to be dry and free from condensate and those oil vapors. We're going to show you in a second how much water is created in a compressed air situation, but we also want to stress the fact that with dry does not mean zero. If your airlines and if you've got a relative humidity coming out of the end of your spray gun hose at that 12% range, that's definitely not high. That's in a very, very acceptable range where many paint companies will list up to 20% relative humidity or even a little more than that coming out of your airlines is fine for spraying water or solvent paint. This will definitely give you that. We want constant and sufficient air volume. And as we talked about with this filter, SATA stresses all the way up to 135 CFM. And if you've got multiple painters, which we'll show you in a little bit, this is a scenario where you can have one filter to run all 4 of your painters instead of having to have 4 separate filter units. We want it to be sufficient pressure available. And if you've got constant air volume, you're going to keep your consistent pressure rather than having air pressures that are going to change every PSI that it changes or every CFM that you don't have, you end up seeing pressure drops. So this is an effective way of keeping color match also. This chart kind of shows you, if you look on the left-hand side of this, it shows you a temperature range. So this one's at like 78 degrees to 80 degrees and having 80% humidity. Depending on where you are in the country, here in Minnesota, we can have, usually the temperature and the humidity match in the summer, or in the spring, it can be a little cooler and even wetter, etc. But wherever you're at, if you, except maybe the desert climate states, you can have 80% relative humidity many days out of the year, spring, fall, summer, maybe not in the winter, but at other times. So what this chart will show you is at 80 degrees, 80% humidity, you make about, you'll make about 2 ounces of, 8 grams, or about a 1/4 ounce of water every 15 or so cubic feet of air that goes through this. And so when we start looking at this, if you pull a trigger of a spray gun for 7 minutes, you're going to have up to 2 ounces of water every 7 minutes of use in your shop. So when you've got multiple people pulling the trigger on guns, multiple people using blowguns, using DAs, using everything, you can create gallons of water in a daily basis, or even in a weekly basis, making gallons. So it's important that you have good piping, have good drain schedules where you're draining your tanks, put auto drain valves on your tanks, and make sure your plumbing is done correctly to help eliminate that water before it gets to your, even before it gets to the filter. And what's left over, the water vapor and some of those droplets can be eliminated, because no filter is out there to eliminate ponds or puddles of water coming through the airlines. So here's a little bit of a look at what the 3 stages do. The first stage is the yellow cyclone that I showed you. I want you to look on the right-hand side of the slide. It filters down to 5 microns. Through the water cyclone, rotates the air in a constant pressure and a constant speed to throw the larger particles to the outside, where they're drained by an automatic drain valve in the bottom of this SATA filter that has a float system that when it's got moisture in it, it drains. So even when you've got higher pressure on your filter, it will still auto drain. Secondly, the cleaning and exchange is after 6 months. In the 6-month time frame, you'll see in red on the left side, you'll clean that yellow cyclone, you'll rinse the sintered filter that's on the inside with thinner or acetone and scrub it with a nylon scrub brush on the outside, because all the particulates are on the outside, and then rinse it and blow it dry. Now air goes from, this first stage now has that flow optimized cyclone device. The yellow piece is, they've found a way to keep the air at a constant speed, where in the older versions in our 200 series or our 400 series, air would go faster, then it would slow down, then it would exit faster, and it could cause some disruption in the airflow. So they found a way to make that more consistent all the way through. The optimized pressure eliminates pressure drops, definitely helps. Now this first stage, if that's all you need is the first stage, you can use that for your out in the shop for your air tools, blowguns, or even keeping air clean for if you got any gun cleaners, etc. This is a little better picture that you'll have a copy of this emailed to you, but this shows a little better flow rate of air from the left one, which had a little air disturbance, to the right one, which gives us, the new version gives us a little better airflow. The second stage is the fine filter stage. It now gives us separation efficiency of 99.998%, so we're very, very clean air. You can use this for solvent-borne paint, or you can use this if you have a pressure fed hood like our Vision 5000 or the 2000 with a carbon belt unit on your waist. This one now also is just like before. It's exchanged every 6 months, and it filters all the way down to 0.01 microns, which is 10 times finer than majority of the filters out there, and no desiccant. So the third stage, separation efficiency, is now 100% clean. You exchange it after 6 months. Suitable for the use of waterborne or solvent-borne. Positive pressure mask can now be used without having to wear a carbon on your belt unit because you have it on the wall. And by not being able to have one carbon belt unit for every painter, the more painters you have, the more efficient that having this one cartridge on the wall that you change every 6 months is. So easy to change. We can add this 544 or 564 carbon filter to a two-stage. If you start out with a two-stage filter, we can add this as another stage. But we also have this filter available, and I'll show you in a minute, as a line filter without the regulator and manifold, so you have that option. You'll notice something that's new for us on the manifold and gauge portion. There's two red couplers. We've had them before with a crimped end that was crimped to like our whip hoses, or crimped on where you have to buy a whole hose, but it's the first time that we've had these with threaded ends. So they are available. They're real simple. You click the hose in one-handed. You can disconnect it one-handed. They're fairly short in size, so they're comfortable for hanging underneath a gun, but they're super easy to connect and disconnect. So that is an option. They cost a little more money than our brass ones that we've had for the last 25 years. But both the brass ones that SATA has that are very reasonably priced, as well as these, both flow a high amount of air volume through them. And they're short and much shorter than the push button connectors that can really extend the length of what hangs off the bottom of your gun and mess with your ergonomics. This is just a comparison, the one on the left versus the one on the right. The one on the right is the new gauge, just easier to read, more clearly identifies the 15 bar as the max point, which is again about 218 psi. This slide, I'm not going to go through all of this again, but it is just a recap slide so you can see all of the advantages of this three-stage filter. Some of the highlights I do want to reiterate. The first one, higher absorption of contamination compared to the 484 due to the new centered activated charcoal filter. The airflow and the connections now are up to 135 CFM. The SATA filter timer is now just one to change, so it comes with each of your cartridges. And by the way, because you only need those second two cartridges, the fine filter with the blue ends and the carbon filter come in a pack with one of each, and it's a little less money than buying them separately. So you'll want to take a look at buying that two-pack. The filter timer, again, once every 6 months. Filter maintenance, again, on all three stages is 6 months. And the maintenance-free bayonet style, where the cartridge just drops into the canister and then clicks onto the filter, is super simple, easier to maintain, less things to worry about. You don't have to change 2 O-rings on each cartridge. You don't have to thread a fine thread onto anything. It's just simpler. Again, perfect and defined positioning of the cartridges and of the filter is really important, so that airflow always stays the same, so you're not changing it with angles on the different filters, particularly on the water cyclone. Color code system on the canister as well as on the top of the body and the cartridges are all color coded to match. Large pressure regulator. We've upgraded also the easy to mount system is just simple to mount it to the wall without the filter canisters in the way. They're real simple. Maintenance free sealing underneath. The rubber O-rings that I showed you, those things don't need to be replaced. They just have to make sure that they're in place. And it's very rare that they're going to move, but if they move, it's easy. Just press them back in, put your canister back on. Left to right is reversible, as I showed you in the beginning, and then the flow optimized water cyclone together with the sintered bronze element are down to 5 microns just in the first stage. This is just a slide showing the 3 different cartridges. The second 2 are the ones you're most often going to replace. The first one would be replaced if you have an issue at a shop where they have a ton of oil that got spilled into something. You can clean these. However, they eventually, if you've got a lot of debris or a lot of oil collected on these, then it may be once in a while replace that sintered element. There really isn't a time frame, but it wouldn't hurt every few years to make sure you replace that. The carbon filter, as you'll notice, just like the first filter, are both sintered, where they're porous, where they collect particles on the outside, so you can see the trash and debris. The fine filter, though, the air that flows through it goes from the inside of the cartridge to the outside, so all the debris is on the inside. So if you open the filter and you look and you say, well, my cartridge still looks clean, it may be on the outside edges, but on the inside, it's where everything is trapped. Just a quick review on here. On the right is the 500 series filter. It is a higher absorption of contamination compared to the 484 by approximately 10% due to the better carbon filter. 135 CFM at 87 pounds of line pressure versus 127. 1 filter timer instead of 3 to change. Filter maintenance is the same on all 3, where on the 400 or the 200, you had 2 of them at 6 months and 1 at 3 months. Flow optimized cyclone just gives us a much better particle separation efficiency, again about 10% better, and still 5 microns in the first stage. The color code system makes it easy to know which cartridge goes in which cylinder, and again, the sealings on the inside are maintenance free. Again, recap, you can look at this when you get the presentation so you can remember this, but again, 100% technically clean air, all the way down to 0.01 microns. Sintered element, of course, is only replaced once every 6 months or cleaned every 6 months. The 135 CFM is an improvement. The temperatures on these, they can be in the paint booth up to 248 degrees if they don't have carbon. However, if you have a carbon filter on, you need to keep that can be in the booth at 104 up to 140 degrees. But we certainly suggest hanging the filters on the outside of the booth, run a pipe through the wall, and just use a regulator in the booth to keep everything cleaner too. And the last one is, they're right or left mounted 1/2-inch thread. Those are straight threads, pipe threads, and as well as it has the manifold on the 3-stage and 2-stage is a 1/4-inch thread. I'm going to show you a quick video. This video kind of shows how air flows through the unit, so it'll just take a minute to run. All right, that video is on our YouTube channel. So if you go to our YouTube channel, it's just go to YouTube and search on SATA by Dan Am. There's about 130 different how-to videos in there, and we uploaded all of these Filter 500 video links. So the one you just looked at is the second one from the left called Functionality. There's a teaser video if somebody, you just want to send somebody that, but all these are QR code labels, so you can just scan them with your phone and they'll come on. Otherwise, just go to our YouTube channel and just search on 500 or Filter 500 and it'll find all of these. There's one on maintenance, there's one on retrofitting it to add a carbon filter. So if you want to, it shows you how to take it from a 2-stage to a 3-stage. There's one on extending if you want to put 4 manifold outlets on. There's one on cleaning, and there's one on installation. Is the 5th one over, or 6th one, I guess. And then we also have, though, the last one on here is called In-Depth Filter by Dan Am. That's one that we just finished up with Collision Hub that kind of encompasses everything into one video. And it's one that we did. So those are all available to you. If you need individual links, you can find them on YouTube, or you can call us. We can send you a link directly to it. One thing I showed you in the beginning, this is just showing screwing a fitting in. This thing is laying on its back, the filter is, and you'll see the top one is correct, where you don't see any threads on the inside, and then the lower one is with the X on it, shows a white circle around where you could see threads penetrating into the inlet side of the filter. You just want to make sure they didn't do that. So if someone calls you and says, I can't get any air through, have them take your canisters off, look up in there, and if you see your threads, then you need to back it off, reglue it in place, or put in that little adapter that we included with it to stop that from happening. This is what the label is going to look like. The sticker that's going to cover the air hole going into the filter just shows them with a 1/2 inch in is where it needs to, where you need to stop a fitting, so that plumbers or airline specialists don't over tighten that into the filter too far. And this is that adapter that's going to come with each of those filters to make it simple. So it just screws into the female thread hole in the filter, and it leaves you with a female thread. 1/2 inch pipe thread on the outside, so it's really, then you don't have to worry about it. This is if you're using Dan Am Air, our air inlet, we have a stem connector that's threaded on one end. That threads right into the filter, and it is set at a distance that stops in time, so you don't have to worry about that. And then you just put your press on push to connect fittings from Dan Am Air right on the outside and continue your plumbing. So that's simple also. The one on the left just shows you a little close-up picture of a 2-stage portion of a filter, where how easy the different mounting holes are to use. It's a close-up picture in the center, just showing you the rubber seal on the inside that your cartridge presses up against. And then on the right is a little easier to see image of a threaded piece that turned in too far, where you can look up inside and see the threads. Comparisons, the 500 series versus the 200 series. We are keeping the 200 series filter in place, and we need that because not all shops have 135 CFM. If you're running a 10-horse compressor that makes 38 to 40 CFM, the 200 series filter may be all you need. You may decide that you want the 500 series for the easier cartridge changes, but the one on the right is a lower cost filter. It's a 72 CFM filter. Max pressure is 145 PSI or 10 bar, where the one on the left, the 500 series, is 218 PSI max pressure, and certainly has higher CFM value. So if we're looking at how much is used by painters, on the left, the 500 series is a 135 CFM, where the one on the right is 72 CFM. Max air inlet pressure on a 500 series is 218, where it's only 145 on the right. The X5500 uses about 15 CFM. An AirVision hood can use 6 to 15 CFM, depending on pressures and what you have set and how many foot hose you have. The air cooler can be 6 additional CFM, so averaging 30 CFM per technician. You could run 4 techs off of one filter, and that's 4 using breathing hoods, using air coolers, using HVLP spray guns all at the same time. On the right, if your shop is smaller or you have less of a compressor, this might be the right choice for you, and at a savings up front on the filter. But definitely that'll still run more than, it'll run 2 plus some, obviously at 30 CFM a painter. These are the different options we have. The 500 series on the upper left is the full 584 with regulation and a manifold. We have a portable stand that should be here in a couple of weeks that's for demos, so it can mount to a stand so you can carry it from shop to shop. We provide a 6-foot lead-in hose that hooks up to it so you connect to their existing air, and now all of your demos are being done with clean air. So you can use breathing hoods and have good clean painting air for your demonstration. The second one is a line filter version that this line filter just has no regulator, has no manifolds on it, but it's mounted in line, and we typically do this out in the shop so that you can run all of your airlines through it and then go to your various booths or locations where you have regulation. On the right, you'll see an adapter, and that manifold adapter gauge manifold is there so that if you do want to hook up a CO monitor to the line filter, you can screw that in the end. It has a port on the bottom that we send it with a CO monitor. We send a 90-degree angle elbow that has a compression fitting on it to hook up the sampling line for a CO monitor. But this port also has a port on the top of it where you can screw a gauge in it if you do want to have a gauge. And we provide it. We have a dynamometer gauge that's about 16 bucks that screws right in there, and you can have pressure on that. Now on the existing filter, the 584 filter, there is a port right on the back side of the manifold that comes out that you can hook a CO monitor. So if you have the full 584, not the line filter, there is a port already installed for CO monitors. The 200 stage, 200 filters is the same way. We have it in a 3-stage, we have it in a line filter. You can get both of them. If I go back, you can get both of them in a 2-stage line filter. You can also get just the carbon if you need to upgrade later. Same thing with the 200 series, just lower CFM. Regulators, we have a number of options. The one that I would say probably is the best choice is this lower one, the Dynam one. That's 140 CFM. Nice size gauge, easy to turn regulator, comes with a 2-port manifold, couplers and fittings already included for about 170 bucks, 169 I think it is. So really a very good value. We do have the option of the SATA new 500 series regulator. It looks great. It's got those nice red couplers on it. It's going to cost you some more money, but if you want the absolute best and having something that matches the rest of your filtration, then we have an option for that. The filter timer, that was the old version. You had to have 3 separate timers. Now the new version has just one, so that's simpler. Maintenance. The big thing with maintenance is time. Time and of course the cartridge costs. So in this version, if we use the maintenance time on the new 500 series filter, because everything is at 6 months, it cuts a whole step out of the year and 2 canisters, cartridges that have to be replaced. It's actually cheaper to maintain the 500 series than it is the 400 or the 200 because of that. It's 7% cheaper to do the 2 cartridge changes in a year on a 500 series than it is to do the 3 cartridge changes or 4 cartridge changes on the 200 series. So although the 500 series filter is about 5% more expensive than the 400 series was before that, it's 7% per year cheaper to do the cartridge changes. So we're excited about that. That is the, well, I would add one more slide. I want to show you, as a reminder, we do have a couple options for drain valves like we talked to in the beginning. The right-hand side is an electronic one that screws to the bottom of your tank or the bottom of your compressor. It's got 2 timers on it. One you can set, I want it to purge every hour or every 30 minutes or whatever you want. And then the other one is how many seconds do you want it to purge? So you can set it from a ½ second up to 5 seconds. Our suggestion and what we did in our booth is primarily where we were most concerned about it is we plumbed it into the bottom of our extra large storage tank behind our booth, and then we wired it into the booth light. So whenever the booth's on, this thing purges. That's an option, but you can plumb it to anywhere you'd like. The one on the left is an auto discharger that has the same float system in it that our filters do. So it's pipe thread on the top, 1/2-inch pipe thread. You can just screw it to the bottom of any 1/2-inch pipe thread drop tube, and it auto purges when it gets full. So if you're in an explosion-proof area, that's a good option. So that's the end of mine. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to move on to Chris Springer to talk about the 1500 versus the X5500. So thank you for paying attention.
Yeah, and I believe I may have shared my screen a little too quick. If you
That's
want, what's
I
that?
think you're good. You should be good to go.
Let me see here. Oh, I can't.
I can see it on our end.
You can see my presentation?
Yep.
Yes.
Does it advance?
No.
There we go. Ah,
There you go.
okay. So jumping into the comparison of the 5500 versus the 1500, just I'd like to give, even prior to going into this presentation, I'd like to give a quick just overview and understanding of why the 1500 came to be. It's been out now for, geez, Tony, we're approaching what, 3 years? 2.5 roughly. And reason being was, you know, prior to the 5500, we had the 5000. And for years now, if you really looked at the trends in our business and in our industry, you know, with our primary focus or most people's primary focus being on the refinish industry, not that the industrial or commercial industries aren't just as important. But when we talk ABRN, body shop business, those type of magazines or information that's being fed out to those of us that use these types of products, everything has been tailored and geared towards low VOC or waterborne coatings. It has been now really since California's legislation switched over to 3.5 VOC base coats and 2.1 clear coats. That's really all you see. And from an equipment manufacturer or from a paint gun manufacturer standpoint, you know, we have to gear our equipment to stay with the latest trends and not only what's current, but what's coming in the future. So that's also part of my role, is working with the paint companies, making sure that they're not developing anything that all of a sudden is going to obsolete all the equipment that we have, as well as they work very closely with us to make sure, you know, if they are trying to develop something, that we can develop it with them and go to market together. But that being said, the majority of what we see is going towards waterborne, and waterborne, when compared to solvent-borne, the amount of energy that it takes at the front of an air cap is greater. It takes more energy to shear and atomize a waterborne resin system than it does solvent-borne. Solvent, you just hit it with air and it breaks up into fine particles, but waterborne doesn't like to do that. Which we've, you know, most of you have probably learned this just the hard way over the years of being exposed to water. So our 5500s and our 5000s, they were very tailored towards waterborne coatings. Now, that's not to say that they don't spray solvent-borne base coat. When you look at the dynamic of the United States, and I'm speaking specifically for the 50 United States, is, you know, even though there are paint companies out there where 50% of their business or greater is in waterborne technology, looking at the industry as a whole, our country is about a 20 to 25% of the shops that are out there right now are on water, which the other side of that coin, which you know, when we're reading those industry mags and looking at all of this trends of the future, it's not talking about the fact that 75 to 80% of our shops that are out there are still spraying solvent-borne technology. And this isn't going to get into a conversation about which technology is superior. I think it's probably more of a preference thing than actually a superiority thing. And it's not to say that those shops that have been spraying solvent-borne for 20 years just are stuck in their ways and not willing to update. Like I say, the technology that fits in your shop is going to be more applicable to what you're doing and what you prefer than which one is superior. But we have to address both. So with our 5500s gearing towards finer and finer atomization and more energy at that air cap to make sure that we get good even material distribution throughout a pattern, good metallic and pearl orientation, we start getting into these coatings. When you're looking at the trends in the OEM, you're starting to get into colors like 8X1 and 3T5. You've got 46G, which is that vacuum metallized flake that Mazda came out with, right? Very similar to what's on a Nissan with KAB or Mercedes Alubeam. You're getting into these colors and these metallics that are so specific and so technical that your standard just, hole that spits paint out that air hits and atomizes just isn't going to cut it. You really need to get into very fine, very specific atomization. You've noticed if you've been in this business for any amount of time, when I started out in this, there were 2 holes in the air cap, 1 in each air horn. And now when you look at our 5500, there's 10 holes in an RP air cap, right? There's 2 in each air horn, and there's 6, 3 on each side surrounding the center of the air. And that's basically so that as that paint is coming out, it's getting pre-atomized, post-atomized, and then actually spread into that pattern to make sure that you're getting from top to bottom, right, a nice material distribution throughout that pattern. In the 1500, it's more reminiscent of, what I lived it, so I like to call it the good old days or the heydays of solvent-borne base coat systems, right? When the NR 2000 came out, when the 3000 was out, when those guns were kind of ruling the world, and you could go in almost any body shop really in the world and find a SATA in there that was spraying solvent-borne base coat. It's very reminiscent of those. And when I say that, we've all become accustomed to, I need a 12-inch pattern or it's no longer acceptable, right? And even though that's, perfect for spraying hoods and sides of vehicles, but when it comes to spraying smaller parts or rounded parts, that big 12-inch pattern isn't really doing you any favors for transfer efficiency. As well as when it comes to solvent-borne products, you may have experienced this, and hopefully not, but you may have tried spraying like a 5500 1.3 with a 12-inch pattern and solvent-borne base coat. It feels dry. I'm a very impatient painter. I'm the painter that's close, fast, let's get it done. The customer is in the lobby finishing up their cup of coffee, and this car's got to go today. So that's just the style that I've been, that's the bosses that I had over my years in shops and doing this. So my focus has always been, production. If the paint gun setup that I have is starving my application by it feels dry, it's forcing my hand in, or I need to slow my arm speed down to compensate for it, I'm causing a couple negatives. I'm overutilizing material because I'm slowing down to try to get the wetness, but in fact I'm using more material to try to accomplish that wetness. So what the 1500 does is it's very, very focused on the way that it atomizes and the way that the pattern is created. It is a shorter pattern than what you're used to in a 4000, 5000, 5500. But there's a reason for that. That little bit shorter pattern, that little bit wider pattern is what solvent-borne base coats and low VOC products like. So there's really the 2 aspects to the 1500. And we've kind of, Tony and I both put on our marketing hats when we were naming this spray gun, and we called it the SoLV, right? There's a few reasons for that, and this is why I say our marketing hats is SoLV to me is problem solving, right? This is a solution to a problem. Problem being atomization and wetness on solvent-borne products. But you'll notice it's SO with a capital LV. That LV should trigger in your mind low VOC. So that's what the LV can stand for, is low VOC, or low viscosity. So you get into speed clears, and I don't want to randomly name some that you may not necessarily support, but when I talk about low viscosity speed clears, I'm talking about those clears that when you mix them, they're like water thin and they're very, very fast on their dry time. A negative characteristic of clears that are thin and dry really, really fast is typically poor application. So if you're over atomized or you're not wet enough, they feel really, really dry. You struggle getting film build. You're using too much material. You're blowing overspray into the air. And that's where the 1500 comes into play. Because it has that shorter, wetter pattern, it doesn't have as much atomization as what we would classify as our premium gun, right? The 5500. But it has exactly the amount of atomization that it needs for the types of products that it was developed for. So now that I've gone down that rabbit hole on the first slide, the rest of this presentation should only take about another hour and a half. I'm obviously kidding. So I'd like to jump through just a couple slides with you We'll talk about the 1500 and what features it has and what's available with it. And then we'll jump into the 5500 and then do kind of a quick side-by-side comparison at the end. And this is a very quick presentation, so don't sweat that. On the 1500, affordable, quality, and reliability was kind of our top, what we were aiming for. Quality and reliability is something that is a guarantee with SATA. But what's happened over our industry over the last quite a few years, 5 to 10 years, is this expectation on price and other brands that are out there pushing, a lower priced option. So when the 1500 was developed and we were designing it and working with Germany and making sure it was hitting, every checkbox that we required on performance, cost was another aspect of that. So not talking pricing, but the way that I like to say this to anybody, because it's an easy number to remember, is a 1500 is about 60 to 65% the cost of one of our 5500s. So when you're talking about branding and market positioning, our 5500 is our premium, top of the line, Mercedes, Ferrari, Lambo type of spray gun. Our 1500 is kind of that General Motors, that Ford F-150, that very durable, reliable spray gun, but it's coming at a lesser cost than those top tier guns. And there is a reason for that, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. It is specific for low VOC as well as national rule products. So this should be completely irrelevant to the market that you're in. I don't care if you're in a low VOC area that's using compliant solvent-borne base coats, or you're in a national rule area that's been spraying a solvent-borne base coat that's been out for 25, 30 years. It's going to fit both markets and it's going to perform with those products. And again, though I reference frequently what base coat system you're using, the 1500 is something that can be utilized throughout the entire system. It's a good gun because of its price for someone that's just getting into the business. I like to, and I'm not sure how your relationships are with vocational schools, but I like to go into vocational schools and talk about this gun because it's keeping the students that are serious about our business and getting into this industry and graduating and going to work in shops. It keeps them from making the same mistakes that we did, right? And I use this respectfully, but it's rather than going out and buying the Harbor Freight gun twice or 3 times and it not performing and you not setting your baseline expectations of performance right out of the gate, by choosing the 1500, you're getting into a far superior gun to some of the generics that you can buy out there, but you're not quite breaking the bank as you would with a top coat or our 5500 line. And the other nice thing is, if, for instance, if I pick the RP13, I could spray sealer, I could spray base coat, and I can spray clear coat out of the same gun. So it's a gun if I'm just getting into this business, or if you're a veteran and you've been spraying for, longer before I was born, which is totally fine. If you're replacing your base gun or you need a new clear gun or money's tight, we know the economy is crazy right now. It's a great alternative to that as well. So it's nice because it's a balanced package, right? It meets every need, whether you're new, experienced, solvent-borne, low VOC, national rule, doesn't matter. How we keep that cost down is rather than coming out with the entire portfolio of nozzles, right? Look at the 5000 spray gun. We go from 0.8 on a fluid tip all the way up to 2.0 and 2.2 in some cases. How we keep some of that cost down in this gun isn't in quality. We're not sacrificing our manufacturing standards. We're minimizing what our offering is. So out of all the work that I did going around to the paint companies, making sure that our prototypes were working and they were performing the way that we wanted to, I literally spent 9 months spraying every solvent-borne base coat and clear coat that's out there. It was an incredible amount of work, but the nice thing that we achieved with that is we found that pretty much every system, whether it's a mid-tier or a premium paint system, national rule or low VOC, we were able to accomplish our goals with either a 1.3 or a 1.4. And in typical SATA fashion, we will always introduce our guns in an HVLP and an RP. So you have different style painters, you have different, preferences in the way that you spray. Some people prefer HVLP for base. Some people like RP for clear. Some painters like RP for both. And that's totally fine. That's why we always give you those options. As a little bit different trend for us, typically our automotive paint guns, it's easy to say with the 4400, our primer guns, the Jet 100, the 1000s, the 4000, 5000, 5500, all of our inlet pressures have pretty much been standardized for many years now at 29 PSI inlet, gets you that compliance, right? Meaning on an HVLP, that gives you no more than 10 PSI at the air cap, and on an RP, that equates to 65% transfer efficiency or greater. This is the anomaly in our catalog. So it's a little bit different, not that it's a huge deal or anything, but these guns, our maximum recommended inlet pressure is 26 PSI. And reason being is because it is that shorter pattern, a little bit wider, the way that it atomizes and its efficiency with solvent-borne coatings, we've found that 26 is kind of the maximum that we've ever needed for any of those products. As far as air consumption, it's 12.4 CFM on the HVLP and 10.2 CFM on the RP. Jumping into the 5500, this we introduced, it'll be 2 years this SEMA. The main thing with the 5500 that really sets it apart from any other spray gun really in our business is its options in fan patterns. What we've done for years and what SATA Germany has done for years is kind of a one size fits all, and each fluid tip was kind of tailored towards a specific type of product. I could tell you that an HVLP 1.3 was really geared towards solvent-borne base coat, and a 1.4 was really geared towards clear coats. And when you sprayed those patterns, your 1.3 was this tall and your 1.4 got a little bit shorter. And it got shorter so that you had more material and a shorter pattern, so that when you were spraying clear, it was nice and wet and it was easy to get and match that OEM texture that you were shooting for. The issue with that is there are so many paint brands that having a one size fits all or a very generic recommendation of like a 1.3 for base coat or an RP 1.3 for clear, and it'll spray any clear you've got out there. The problem with those generic statements is the complexity of our business, right? There's just too many brands with little idiosyncrasies about them that make them unique and that disqualify any particular nozzle size. So SATA's approach with the 5500 was, okay, let's standardize our patterns. We've done a little bit of market research. We've gone out and listened to voice of customer, and we understand that there's really, we're all unicorns, we're all snowflakes. That's the way I always say this in presentations, because we're all unique and different in the way that we paint, right? And that is true to a point. We're all a little bit different in the booth. We look different. Our approach to a vehicle is different. But when you really dissect it down, there's two types of painters. Ultimately, there's the guys like me that are real close, real fast, like to get it done. Let's move. I like a wet pattern that's very focused that I can then control. And then there's painters that like to go a little bit slower, what we kind of classify as a controlled painter, someone that's a little bit further away from the panel, likes to be very deliberate with their overlap and their angle of the gun to the panel. And there is no way of saying one is right and one is wrong. That is never going to be an argument that can be won, because both of them get to their destination and both of them do a very good job. So we needed to address both types of painters. So that should be the first thing in your mind when you're talking to a painter about what type of nozzle set should they get, whether they have an I or an O nozzle. So those are the two types. We have I nozzles and O nozzles. An I nozzle, the reason they're named I and O is for their shape. An I nozzle, like an I, has very parallel sides and is kind of capped off at the top and bottom. And an O, it kind of stands for oval. What I will tell you, you can program this into your secret decoder ring, is I like to think of these as original and improved. Because if you look at the 5000, the 4000, any previous generation spray gun, the majority of our standardized nozzle sets, meaning 1.2s, 1.3s, 1.4s, they were an oval type shape pattern. And it's very reminiscent of the new O pattern is reminiscent of them. The I pattern, and why I say improved, is it's more like your specialized patterns. The patterns in the 4000 or 5000 that were called the WSB or a 1.2W in an RP. Those patterns were where they took a standard material flow and they narrowed that pattern and stretched it a little bit taller. And what that did was it gave you more metallic control and orientation and control on like a drop coat or a control coat for a waterborne system when you were putting that final orientation coat on or doing a blend. The way the approach is with the I or O is more of a painter preference. Are they a fast painter, a slow painter? I do have times where, you know, I've already admitted to you that I'm an O style painter, but there are plenty of times where I fall into an I pattern because of a color I'm spraying, or it's one of those really difficult colors that constantly has model in it, like BMW 896 Ice Blue is a very good example. It's just, you know, for 99% of us, we'll sell it all day. It'll go out of the shop and it'll leave and a customer will never be the wiser. But those of us that have been in this business long enough, we look at that color and we're always fighting just that little bit of model that's in there. And I'll grab an eye pattern and spray it and there is none. And that's the nice thing about it is it's customizable for the type of painter that you are. This is actually a slide that's slightly outdated. We do have 1.1 through 1.4 for RP, but we've also added a 1.5 and a 1.6 for it. I'll show you that here in a second. As well as on the HVLP side, we have the 1.1 through the 1.5. So here's your side-by-side comparison of the two as far as what nozzle sets are available for both of them. Again, kind of our standard 29 PSI inlet gets you that 10 PSI at the air cap on the HVLP and maintains that greater than 65% transfer efficiency on the RP. HVLP is a little bit higher than the 1500 at 15 CFM, and your RP is 10 CFM when they're both being run at 29 PSI. A nice thing that we have, and these are active QR codes, so if you're looking at this right now and you're real ambitious, you can take your phone and hit either the iTunes App Store or Google Play for Android or anything other than Apple. You can hit those and that takes you to the SATA X5500 nozzle finder app. Honestly, this is really geared for you. It's made for the sales guys, the tech guys that are out in shops, that are talking to painters, that are trying to help that painter make an educated decision on what nozzle size they should choose or which setup. You know, maybe they know they need a 1.3, but they don't know if they should go with an I or with an O. The nozzle finder, personally, I come in, I click that little nozzle finder where you see the picture of the air cap. That takes you to a next tab, which is going to ask you, how would you like to find which fluid tip size you use? Would you like to use it by the type of paint gun that you currently use, the type of product that you're spraying? For me, typically when you're in a shop talking to a painter, they have a gun that's kind of their benchmark. This is what I use daily. This is what I like. If I can improve on it, great, but this is like my minimum requirement to buy a new gun. So I like clicking what spray gun do I like to use. So when you click that, you'll see all the major brands, SATA, DeVilbiss, Iwata, Segola, Wacom, and any other. You can click on, for example, a SATA. Then you can choose under there a 5,000, a 4,000, a 3,000. Let's say I pick a 5,000 RP13, okay? That's my benchmark for what I'm gonna compare my new gun to. When I click next, it takes me to the slide that you see on the right side there, or that little, you know, screen cap on the right side of your screen there. What that's showing you is the preliminary recommendation. If I put in a SATA 5000 RP13, is it tells me it's going to be a SATA X5500 1.3 O nozzle, and O is going to be the equivalent to that spray gun. But let's say this comes into that improvement aspect of how can I make this better? one of the craziest aspects, and what, I spent quite a few years working for a paint company, and one of the most difficult things for us was the dynamic of weather in the United States. It's unlike really any other country in the world. We're in this very specific spot of longitude and latitude that basically we have deserts, we have rainforests, we have, Midwest climates, we've got hot and humid in the south, cold and dry in the north, or excuse me, down in like Arizona, New Mexico at night. You could be in Las Vegas painting at 110 degrees and 3% humidity. And I could fly to Houston later that afternoon and be spraying at 105 with 90% humidity. So this is where you can really dial that in for the part of the country that you live in. I live here in Ohio, and we get those rainy seasons where spring and fall, it's 80 degrees and 80% humidity. So my base coat, if I'm spraying waterborne base coats, they have a tendency to dry a little bit slower. So if I come into this portion of the app, and you can see control and speed, control is going to be your distance, speed is going to be, your arm speed. Those are a little bit tough to adjust for me personally. I can say if you're faster, I might bump the speed up a little bit, or if you're somebody that likes to paint closer, I might move the control in a little bit. But typically the only thing that I adjust on this portion of the app is the temperature and humidity. I can really dial that into the area that I live in. And even if you were in an area and you're like, listen, just because it works in the winter, I need it to work in the summer too. I can raise the temperature in the booth. I can modify the adjustments on the gun to compensate for temperature, but I need this thing to work in the greater majority of the year. So it's April and it's 75 degrees where you're at right now. I can grab that little slide bar and move it up to 95. Maybe 95 degrees is the average temperature for you all summer. As you move and manipulate those little bars there, you'll hit points where you've moved that temperature up or down, or that humidity up or down, where it will change your recommendation. I may leave it there at 70 to 73 degrees, but if I bump that humidity up to 80%, it's going to turn that 130 nozzle into a 13i, because what it's going to want to do is spread out that material a little bit more, atomize it a little bit finer, drive out some more of that water, so that translates to faster flash times for you, or faster dry times. And all of that obviously works forward and reverse. If I lower it, it might change it a different direction. But what it does, and honestly, if you're just give me a generic recommendation for a crossover to another spray gun, you click that spray gun, hit results, and it'll give you your results. The best part of the end of this is at the end, there's an email these results. What I like to tell, sales guys and technicians that are out meeting with jobbers, or excuse me, with painters and shops, is after you do this with them and you've gone through the app finder to find what's the perfect setup for them, try to utilize that as your closer. Use that as your, well, I can email this to the store right now and copy you, and we can get that ordered. And that's the nice thing about that email these results feature. Sorry, I feel like I'm about to sneeze. Is you can email those results, and that's exactly what I do. I email the store, I copy the painter on their email address, and I just say, hey, could you get this ordered for Joe Blow over at ABC Body Shop? And that way you're kind of utilizing that to help push that forward. I've seen a lot of times where I've walked into shops and the painters have taken it upon themselves to download the app, and they have already gone through it. And when I show up, they're like, I want to try this. And I go, perfect. You already seem to know what you need. I set the gun up, let them go in the booth and demo the gun. So really nice feature, having that app available to you. It's something that we will continuously update and add spray guns in there as we're doing things. If by chance you don't see something in there, reach out to me, reach out to Tony. It's something that's programmed on the Germany side of things. So we'll make sure we feedback that information over to Germany, and they can get those results added in there. We are a little bit slow on adding them in there, and I'd like to explain why just really fast. We don't do like a mathematical crossover. We don't take fluid output, pattern size, and just say, okay, it's the equivalent to this spray gun. We do an intensive amount of spraying we're checking wetness, we're checking particle size, we're checking film builds, we're checking metallic orientation, so that when we're giving you a recommendation, we're giving you the most accurate information that we could possibly give you. So here's just a quick recap on the slides. You've got your 5500 on the left, your 1500 on the right. I'm going to run through them really fast, not that you can't read, but I'll read them for you. The 5500 designed and optimized for both waterborne and solvent-borne product application. I didn't specify in there base, clear, anything like that because it's good for everything, and we have the range of nozzle sets to be able to do that. The 1500 is more designed and optimized for solvent-borne. That solve on there should remind you that it's a solvent-borne gun. I will throw out there, it is anodized inside and out, just like all of our spray guns are, so it's not going to corrode if somebody ends up spraying something waterborne through it, but we are not going to come out with specific waterborne setups for it. The 1.3 and the 1.4 is really specific to what we want that gun marketed for. I will tell you on the single stage product atomization, commercial accounts, truck accounts where they're spraying, Mack and Freightliners, the 1500 has been huge in that market. They're really taking off and finding that it's giving them the results that they're looking for. It's very reminiscent of those older guns that painters really liked. The 5500 has the ultra-fine atomization capabilities for a wide variety of products and solid content. So whether you're using an ultra-high solids clear or a medium solids clear, that gun is going to be it's going to be dialed in for you. The 1500 has that specialized atomization and pattern tailored towards national rule and low VOC solvent-borne products. The 5500, I didn't have it in its features and benefits in the previous slides, but it does not have an air distribution ring behind the fluid tip. And what that helps do in the redesign of the entire air system is SATA Germany has trademarked whispering nozzle, and it's basically the reduction in sound coming out of our 5500. I can tell you right now that the RP 5500 is one of the quietest spray guns in our market, and that's over any of the other competition as well. Not that sound really comes into it, but perception is reality, right? When people hear a high sound of air, they think poor poor transfer efficiency. I'm going to have a cloud of clear coat in the booth. So having that very quiet spray gun just aids in that perception and that user friendliness of the product. The 1500 does still have an air distribution ring that helps determine what air is going through the center of the air cap versus the air horns. So that will require maintenance. Just so everyone knows, personally, I think every 6 months is a good time to replace those air distribution rings. Just as they're very, it's all relative, right? But in our world, they're relatively cheap. And it really keeps your gun spraying like new, having one of those in there. Just taking out that fluid tip, time and time again as you're cleaning the gun, really wears that thing down, and you're not getting that good seal that you normally would. Your 5500 is available in both digital and non-digital models. The 1500 is only non-digital. Of course, on non-digital 5500s and 1500s, you have the option of putting a dock in the back of the gun and using one of our Atom 2 digital displays. We've also got the Atom 2U, which is a digital display that can go on the bottom of the gun. So typically, and this is just me being honest with you, typically when I'm talking about the 1500, I have a tendency to not go into digital, because when I take the cost of the spray gun and the cost of a digital gauge and couple it together, it opens people's eyes and go, well, why shouldn't I just jump over to a 5500? And that's a very good point. So typically on the 1500, I try to lean more towards our 27771 gauge, which is just an analog regulator that goes on the bottom of it. In the 5500, we have the I and O nozzle technology to really dial it into a painter's individual style, where the 1500 has that optimized wet core pattern, still with great metallic control, and ideal for veteran painters along with new to the industry. Something you may not know, a standard SATA spray gun out of the box has a 1-year warranty from its purchase date. There's that little registration card that comes inside the box. If you fill that out or have your painter fill that out and send that in, or go to SATAUSA.com and register that spray gun there, they will get an additional 2-year warranty on top of that. All of our guns, whether it's a primer gun, mini jet, the 1500, the 5500, all carry the same warranty, which is what we call a 1+2 gets you 3-year warranty. And finally, just some contact information for you. We've got our main office, which is 1-800-533-8016. Sue or Mona will direct you to one of us that will help you with an order or some technology information. You've also got Tony Larimer's cell phone and email, and you've got my cell phone and email. So easiest way to contact us, or fastest way, because we do a lot of these presentations, we're constantly out visiting customers, an email or text. But by all means, if you'd like to give us a call and talk something through, we'll be there for you, and we will get back to you if by chance we can't answer when you call.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
So that's pretty much everything I've got on my presentation here. I didn't know, did any questions come in as I was rambling on for quite a bit?
No, but I have to say, between your explanation and your presentation, the both of you were so very thorough.
All right. Well,
there are no questions right now, but again, I'm going to follow up. I'll send you both your information and Tony's with the copy of both presentations and all of the attachments we talked about, so everybody can follow up with you guys directly.
All right, thanks everybody.
Any questions in the
We
chat?
really appreciate your time today. We went over a little bit, but thanks for hanging in there.
All right, thanks guys.
Thanks everybody.